In this step, we're going to register our new block type. And in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is create another file and make sure you're in this O1 basic block directory. And we're going to create a file called block.js. So type in touch block.js and you should see a new block.js file open there. And so I'm going to click into there. All right, and the first thing we want to do is pull in those dependencies. So we're going to use ES6, which is the latest, or ES Next is what they're calling it. It's the latest version of JavaScript. And we're going to use something called JavaScript destructuring. So here's how we do that. You do const, and you might be used to this being a var, a variable. It's just called const now. And so it would be const underscore underscore to pull in the internationalization library. And then we also need to pull in the register block type function. From the WP, from blocks dependency. Okay, and before I go any further, I want to make sure that if you want to learn more about ES Next and this destructuring, you're going to be seeing a lot of different things that we're using here that you may not be used to. I'd really recommend checking out this course by Wes Boss. I have this in the notes. It's called ES6 for Everyone, and I'm going to pull this up really quick. It's an amazing course, and Wes Boss, once again, he does such a great job walking you through simplifying things, and really quickly can get you up to speed on the latest version of JavaScript. Okay, so let's get back to writing some code. So let's write some basic CSS to style our block. And for now, we're gonna do some inline styling. Give it a background color, make it a reddish color. And then a font color of white. And let's give our block some padding. And remember, this block's not going to do much. We're just going to give it a little styling. And I got to make sure these are all strings here. Otherwise, we're going to run into parsing issues. Okay. And so the next thing we need to do is register the block type. And that function looks a little like this. Register block type. And it takes two arguments. The name will go here, and then a object here, which is our block. And so now we're getting into the meat of, we did all this setup, and this is creating the actual block. So we're literally there. We're finally there. Okay. So let's name our block, and just as a note, you're going to want to name this block using a prefix, which is the same as the name of your plugin. So it'll just be like my plugin and then your block name. And you have to use this prefix. It's the only way it'll show up in the inserter in the Gutenberg editor. So we'll call this my plugin block examples. And then the block name is O1 basic block. But just an important note, this O1 basic block, this isn't going to work. You're going to run into an error because it can't start with a number. So I'm just going to use block examples again here, and we're just going to name everything in our case this way. Usually, if you don't use a number in the name, which you're not going to be doing most of the time, I would guess, you can get away with just naming it like this. Okay, and then the second object argument, it takes a number of different arguments. A title, which this is what we're going to call the block. And we're going to wrap this block title using that internationalization so it can be translated in other languages. So we'll call it basic block. And this title is what's going to show up in the inserter in the editor. So you want to be very descriptive with this and give people a good idea of what the block does. And the next thing we're going to pull in is an icon. And this is also going to be used in the inserter. You don't have to have an icon, but you can use any icon that you define or any of the WordPress dash icons. So I've also included a link in the notes to the dash icons. You can use any of those. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the universal access alternate dash icon. And notice that if you go to the dash icon library, usually it has dash icons on the front. You want to remove that dash icons, and you'll have a whole bunch of different options there at your fingertips. And the next thing we need to do is categorize this block, and we'll just call this layout. And WordPress, in the inserter, they categorize blocks to make it easier for users to find the different blocks. So you want to make sure you pick the right category so your block can be easily found. And then we have two functions, and these are the core of the block: the edit function and the save function. And the edit function is what is going to be used in the Gutenberg editor. The save function is what's going to be used on the front end. So I'm just going to write these notes down. And then use in the front end. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to return what needs to be rendered, basically our block. So we're going to use something called JSX. And JSX is a syntax for JavaScript. You don't have to use JSX, but since we're using ESNext and React, I really recommend you using JSX. And I've also included in the notes some information on what JSX is and how to use it. So it looks a little like HTML, but it's got some funky stuff. So here, we'll write a little HTML. And then to do an inline style, we'll use curly brackets. And you can use these curly brackets also to pull in variables or insert JavaScript. And we're going to just drop in our block style object. And then just type in some text that's going to go inside our block in the editor. Okay, and then for the save function, we're going to return the same thing, but we're just gonna return the same style, but we're gonna put some different text in here. All right, and close that out just like you would. And let me make sure this has a closing tag on it. Okay, so we just created our first block. I also need a closing tag or closing commas there. And there we go, we got our first block. Now in the next step, we're going to create our package JSON file. This is going to give us all the tooling we need for this to be parsed. Right now, this isn't going to do anything for us. We need to pull in all the different tooling, and I'll walk you through each step that we need to take to make that happen. See you then.